frustrated. Powerless. Judgmental. Checked out. And in the end, sad, grieving, guilty. I'm Lainey Love. I am a mama, an author, an award-winning coach, and a person, a grieving person, whose family and life has been touched by addiction.
When you think of an addict, how would you describe them? In some cases, people call them junkies, waste of space, low life. I'm here to tell you that they are none of the above. They are human beings. My son wasn't any of those. I'm Sandra. I'm a warrior mom, and I've been touched by addiction. My son Ben is no longer with us. He lost his battle with addiction last year. Stigma hurts. Stigma prevents people from getting help. Ben recognized very early on the stigma attached to addiction. Ben was an advocate because he shared his experiences as an addict openly and honestly on our Spirit to Live YouTube channel. We need to end the stigma. Thank you, Ben, for helping me find my purpose. I am thrilled to be a part of Preventative Health Awareness Month.
I am very grateful that I get to be a FAMCAST.
Real people touched by addiction. Join me and some other amazing FAMCAST. Share their real lives, share their stories, their hope, their strength, their resilience. As a mom who lost her son, Ben, I can say I have no regrets. No more stigma, no more shame. Let's change the narrative when it comes to addiction. Real lives touched by addiction. You are not alone. Remember, where there is breath, there is hope.
Wow. Welcome to this special edition of FAMCAST. What you just watched, that very powerful trailer, was from an incredible event that we hosted during Preventative Health Awareness Month 2025 called Real Lives Touched by Addiction, You Are Not Alone. It was an incredibly impactful and powerful day, and the incredible FAMCASTers that were in that clip, I am so excited and so honored because they're in studio with me today. And we're going to really dig in deeper to this whole concept and conversation that needs to be had about mental health, addiction, and the fact that we need to look at it through a holistic lens because it impacts everyone, the family, the recovering addict, our community, and our future. There has never been a more important conversation at a more important time in history, and I am honored as the leader of FAM to be in studio with Luke Laughlin of the Inside Job Project, recovery painting, and doing an unbelievable job working his recovery every single day. Luke, good to see you. And Jennifer McCutcheon of Enable No More and Mums on a Mission. I got to tell you, Jen's story is impactful and powerful, but what's more incredible is the work you're doing now to change the future for families that are experiencing right now, that are watching right now, that are loving a loved one with addiction like you have done for decades. And it almost broke you. And here you are in studio today because we're here to change the legacy of healthcare, one conversation at a time, one politician at a time, and event to event. Welcome to PHAMCAST. Wow, that trailer had us all in tears when we played it. But more importantly, that event in February of this year, not only was I incredibly proud to be part of it, but it left it touched my heart. And I just would love to hear from both of you. Luke, why don't you start to what was that day like for you, sitting on that panel with the group of us? And, Sandra and Lainey will be out later in the show. They were on the panel. What was that like for you as somebody in recovery? What was that day like?
It was very emotional because my mom and dad were there at the event, and they've been family members while their son has battled addiction and alcoholism and a lot of ugly, ugly moments in our family's lives. So sitting up there, getting to share my story, I was more excited also though to hear, Jen's story, Lainey's story, Sandra's story, because I have these family members in my life that have went through that, and these are people who are like having their own recovery and taking their own power back to not, I see my parents, it's exhausted them. I've seen my siblings, it's, affected them. So it was more, instead of it being about my story as a recovering alcoholic and addict, I was more in tune to like how this really affects everybody else around us, because the family members get left out a lot. We have our communities to recover when we choose to, ask for help and get in there, and then the family members can be left wondering, is it going to happen again? Is this going to happen? So they need recovery just as much as we do.
Oh my goodness. And talk about taking ownership and recognizing the impact that your journey has had, not just on yourself. And I think that is a big part of recovery is thinking beyond yourself. Yes, doing the internal work. Yes, doing the inside job. But also recognizing the wake that your actions and decisions have made on everyone in your life, on your community, on your loved ones. So thank you for sharing, and so vulnerably, as you can see on his shirt. Vulnerability is strength. And I know, I want to say this. I want to say this because I know it can be hard for anybody to be vulnerable, but I think it's really hard in our culture, more and more, for men to be vulnerable. And they're expected to be everything, but one thing they're expected to do is be strong, always. And it's kind of be cool about it. So thank you for sharing so vulnerably. And Jen, as a mother of a child who's, walking through his own journey with mental health and addiction, and you've also been married to a couple of people that also struggled with addiction, you were found to be in this funnel of chaos.
It was a vortex.
A vortex, yeah, exactly. But you're loving them, and all you want is for it to be better. How was that day like for you coming to share your story?
I mean, it was really divinely timed how that whole project came together, and it came to the name of Real Lives Touched by Addiction, and that's exactly what it was. And our mission was to bring awareness, was to bring education, but it was to bring it from real people, real time, real impact, to show all sides of addiction.
Yes.
Because so many times, in my experience, it's, and it's not that we don't care about the loved one, the family member, the friend that is impacted by addiction. But as we've talked about, it impacts everybody, not just family members. I mean, my neighbors, the street that I lived on, the people that I worked with that were interacting with me.
Right.
It touches everybody, and often the conversations that are happening are not by the people that are actually impacted. Right. The people making the decisions of what we should do, shouldn't do, are coming from people that don't have lived experience often, and that was where I found myself really consumed with trying to listen to what everybody else had to say about what I should do, but not listening to myself. So that kind of it was beautiful to be able to witness everybody on the stage, but the audience, the people that were there, and the reactions and the impact and the healing that was coming from the shared story, because my story may be a little bit different, but we're all living it in a different way. Same experiences, but slightly different. So we see each other in each other's stories, and that is where the power comes from, sharing, healing, hearing, and connecting, because you see yourself in that other person.
Absolutely, and that's why the
tagline.
Exactly, with that comes hope, and that's why the tagline was, Real Lives Touched by Addiction, you are not alone.
Exactly.
And that's what today's about, so that anybody that's sitting at home that's struggling, or you have a loved one that's struggling, and there's a lot of shame and embarrassment and fear and isolation in this experience with mental health and addiction, and we're here to say that you can speak up, you can find your community, and you can help yourself. And that's what FAM is about, is it's empowerment. It's about empowerment. So I think I'd like to, sort of move the conversation now into Luke. For those that don't know your story, and I know it's a long and rather traveled journey, could you sort of give our listeners and viewers a little bit of a background about how you got to where you are and now in recovery, and sort of from your lens where it started?
I believe where it started, and try and keep it like short for you guys, just key points in my life. I was diagnosed with a learning disability and ADHD when I was in about grade 6. I heard the psychiatrist tell my mom, what I thought I heard was, your son's not smart, he's stupid, and he's probably not gonna go anywhere in life. That's not what he said, but that's how I took it as a kid. So right away I was filled with anxiety that I was never gonna measure up. I had to go to a special class for it. I got made fun of, I got bullied, and then I became somebody who started using physical force to stand up for myself. And then a second point, I started drinking in high school. My first drunk, I wanted to live in that moment. It's for the first time I was a smart guy. I, wasn't alone anymore, and I remember just wanting to do that all the time. And then I had a traumatic event when I was in my early teens with sexual abuse with an older woman, and that's where, things really took a turn, and I went to the police about it. They pretty much ignored it, didn't do anything, and I just had this anger in life, and the drinking and drug use just started going and going. Broken relationships, broken family relationships, got to the point where my siblings, my first year of recovery, wouldn't even talk to me because they were done hearing sorry. My mom and dad battling all that, and then eventually I hit a point where I got into a lot of trouble and ended up in a place nobody wants to go, and confined in a space, and that's where my journey started.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing so vulnerably, and I know that there's going to be people at home, and for those that are listening, this can be really triggering. This can be a really hard conversation, and so we're going to make sure that we also put resources out for people to be able to reach out for help, and so that you aren't alone, and we're doing our best to create even more resources for you. So hearing your story and sharing it, so what I love, not only just vulnerably, but taking ownership and being courageous to keep and work your tools every single day to continue in your recovery. It's a lifelong journey, isn't it?
Yes, every single day, and we might not be responsible for some of the trauma, like the trauma we received. Like I was a young teenager when the trauma of sexual abuse happened.
Right.
I'm not responsible for that, but what I am responsible for is to recover from that, to heal from that, because hurt people, and I was running around like a tornado, hurting my family, hurting girlfriends, hurting co-workers, employers, myself, most importantly, neglecting myself. So I had to take responsibility, not for the things that I have done and how my trauma poured out on people, but responsibility for my own healing. To correct it. Because the thing that happened to me when I was younger, that person's not coming to heal me.
No.
And I can sit there and say, if this happened to you, you'd be like I am, and I could play in that victim card. It's hard to say. Some people can't accept it, but I'd still be sick and maybe dead today if I didn't get past that victim card and started to get into recovery.
That's powerful, and that's what this whole movement and mission with FAM is about. It's empowering you to become the CEO of your own health and your life, and there's so much freedom, and as Jen, you said, and hope in that. So speaking about hope, your journey with loving a loved one with addiction has been over 2 decades long.
Yes.
And it's been a real challenge. Can you share with everyone a little bit of your story too, and how you've got to this passionate mission about Mums on a Mission?
Absolutely. So yeah, it's been over 25 years of loving my loved ones in addiction. It started with my first husband, who was diagnosed with some mental health issues, and he started to use, which I didn't understand at the time, but I now know, he started to use to escape a deep-rooted pain. Addiction really is a symptom of separation. Separation from who we are, and the separation is a symptom of trauma, unhealed trauma.
Yes.
Along with societal programming and cultural conditioning. So things that have been, who we've been told we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to talk, act, show up in our lives, which is out of alignment with who we truly are. So there's this separation, and people are trying to fill the void of maybe not feeling comfortable in their own skin, not knowing who they are, feeling confused about who they are. There's so many different things. Trauma, experiences that we've experienced. So, he was diagnosed with mental health issues, started to use, and very quickly our whole worlds were turned upside down. And I had this belief system, till death do us part, in sickness and in health, so I stayed and I tried to help and I tried to fix, and it became very clear that I couldn't do it. And I had 2 young babies under 2. So I understood it became dangerous. I left the relationship and did what I had to do, is take care of my kids and start to rebuild my life. My first husband struggled for probably a decade with in and out of active addiction. Remarried a couple years, 3 years later, and soon after that realized I had married into addiction, that my second husband was struggling with alcoholism. And he was a high-functioning alcoholic, very successful, and it was just a navigation at that point. And then my son, at age 15, began his journey with mental health and addictions. So, I had to look at myself and say, how am I here again? Like, how is this happening? Like, I'm surrounded by addiction. And I resisted really looking at it. And all I could do, it was, the experience with my husbands were very different than the experience with my child.
Yes.
So I don't often get into the marriage and that aspect, but it was really my son's addiction that cracked me open to a new understanding about addiction, a new understanding about the traps that I had been consumed by with addiction, being the need to fix, solve, save, and that mama bear syndrome that really crippled me, that really brought me to my knees, because I believed it was my responsibility to save my son, because that's what moms do. We nurture, we love, we protect, and my belief system was it was my job. And that job actually perpetuated the cycles of addiction with my son and I, with our entire family, and it took me a long time to take responsibility for my role. And that didn't happen until I suffered long and hard, where it impacted my mental, physical, emotional, and my spiritual health and well-being. And that's the common thing, is I felt victimized for a long time until I saw a vision. Michael Bernard Beckwith says it the best. Pain pushes until vision pulls. And most of us have to experience the deep pain to make change. And it was hard. It was a lot of near-death experiences, a lot of crisis and trauma with everybody involved. My son's journey has been hard, but he is a warrior, and that's really what's led me on the journey of my own healing, recognizing I couldn't save him. It wasn't actually my job to save him. My job was to take care of myself, prioritize myself, so that I could be there for him when he needed me to be there for him. And it has evolved into me being able to provide things that have worked for me, my journey, and helping other families understand, educate, and provide resources and training to support family members, because as families in recovery, that's where sustainable long-term recovery actually resides.
Well, and you heard it very, very clearly, very passionately, and very articulately. Moms on a Mission.
Moms on a mission. And breaking the cycles of addiction.
You betcha. So, you know, we're going to probably have to have you guys back on, but let's, before we finish up here today, also talk about the hope. And, you know, we just talked about your Moms on a Mission and the work that you're doing with families. And Luke, you know, give some hope to those that are out there suffering, because your life looks different now. Yes, you're still walking through things, but your life looks very different because you are working the tools that FAM and people like who are on the show here today and our bigger network of professionals have stocked your toolbox. What's it given to you?
It's give life. Life. There's that time I didn't want to be here anymore. And one of my favorite sayings is, if there's breath in your body, there's still hope. And I remember I was in a jail cell looking to end my life. And I got a chance to get out and into recovery again. And actually just this past September, one of the biggest gifts is my nephew had a little card, and he said, "I have something for you." And when I opened that card up, it said, "Uncle Luke, will you be my godfather?" And there was a time early in recovery, my brother and sister had their boundaries. They were done here.
And that was important.
And, you know, and today I'm a son today. Like, I show up for my mom and dad. I'm a brother, I'm an uncle, I'm a godfather. Start my own little painting business called Recovery Painting, hopefully to employ people in recovery.
Amazing.
The Inside Job Project.
You're a friend.
I'm a friend.
You're a FAMcastor.
I'm a FAMcastor. There's a lot of many hats where there was a time where I literally just thought I was a waste of space on this earth. I was just a drug addict and alcoholic, which today I can say I'm a recovering, you know, addict and alcoholic. I don't have stigma around it anymore, because I believe if there's somebody listening to my story, they can say, like, hey, he just said that openly and his life has changed. Maybe there's something he's doing that I gotta try. And that's my mission. My mission is to share my story, continue working it every day, and hopefully breathe hope into other people like someone did me. Be the lighthouse for the lost boats in the ocean.
You bet.
You know?
And Jen, just very quickly, you're feeling more hopeful even amongst, as life does, the storms.
Absolutely.
And
yeah, when we learn the power that we have as caregivers, whether you're a parent, a friend, a coworker, a sibling, a spouse, when we understand that we are not powerless over addiction, we are powerful in driving change. We cannot force our loved ones into recovery, but when we take ownership of our role, we break our cycles, we step and reconnect to the truth of who we are, the powerful people that we are. That's where we have influence over our loved ones. Not over them, to encourage them towards healing and recovery. Not by force, but by influence, by being the lighthouse, by being the living example of healing and recovery, which is self-love. I always say recovery begins when you believe you're worthy of being saved. And that goes for the person impacted by addiction and the family members that are having the ripple effects of it. It applies to everybody.
Well, this is just the first segment of this incredible show, and I want to thank you both for kicking off this very important conversation, and I know you'll be back. And if you're wanting to find them, you're going to see them on all their socials. And as Luke said, when there's breath, there's hope. And the next two people that are coming onto the set with me here today is Sandra Murray and Lainey Love. And you're going to hear more about when there's breath, there's hope. And looking at addiction from the lens of loss, because that's real. So stay tuned. We'll be back here in a moment at FAMCAST.